This documentary is made by Johnny Walker to show the relationship between Stokely Carmichael, the SNCC, also known as SNCC, and the Black Power movement. Black Power is a symbol of African Americans and their struggle for equality, but it is also more than that. It's a symbol of their pride and their achievement. By definition, Black Power is a social, economic, and political movement of Black people in the U.S. to obtain equality with white people. This movement grew out of the Civil Rights Movement in the 1960s. Black Power calls for the independent development of political and social institutions for Black people and emphasizes pride in Black culture, not integration. In varying degrees, Black Power calls for the exclusion of whites and the creation of Black societies as a separate unit. Although usually associated with the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power movement was more of a national scale. The Black Power movement lasted from the 1960s to the early 1970s. SNCC, the SNCC, did not truly join until Stokely Carmichael became their chairman in 1966. He changed their outlook from peaceful sit-ins with whites and blacks to a more radical protest movement. Stokely was known for his rousing speeches and things saying Black Power and Black Pride. Here's an excerpt from one of his more famous speeches.
Stokely Carmichael. In this country, you were to think that white people were God, that they had the right to give us our freedom. And so what we had to do was to beg them or to act the way they want us to act before they gave us our freedom. We must not seeking to imitate. We must create for ourselves to save our very humanity. Because the fight for Black Power in this country is indeed a fight to civilize a barbaric country, the United States.
Speeches like that roused Black people to be more proactive. They started becoming more avid voters and recruiting more and more people for the cause. And each time they did this, they rallied around the cry, Black Power for all. The Black Power movement was so inspired and so influential that in the 1968 Olympics, there was a Black Power tribute on the podium. John Carlos and Tommie Smith raised their fists in the Black Power salute. Stokely felt that the civil rights struggle that we face was not of an outward struggle, but of a psychological struggle inward. Stokely himself voiced many of his concerns through his speeches.
And that we maintain, whether they like it or not, we're going to use the word Black Power and let them address themselves to that. We are not going to wait for white people to sanction Black Power.
Stokely was one of the many activists who voiced the idea that blacks were oppressed not because they were inferior, but just because of the color of their skin. Stokely felt that integration was a cop-out. It was a way of submitting to the white man. It was their way of saying, if you do what we tell you to do, then you can sit with us. You can be like us. He said that
we are oppressed because we are black. And in order to get out of that oppression, one must wield the group power that one has, not the individual power, which this country then sets the criteria under which a man may come into it.
As Carmichael's ideas became more radical, his methods did too. He fired many of the long-standing white members in the SNCC organization. As SNCC's ideals changed, so did their style of clothing. Over time, their clothing style reflected their ideology. In the beginning, when their goal was to obtain integration, their clothing style was simplistic. They wore denim work shirts and overalls. As their ideas became more sophisticated and more militant, their clothing became sophisticated as well. They started to wear cashmere sweaters and ties, and to shy away from the country-style clothes. In the end, Stokely was just too radical. Stokely eventually separated from the SNCC and joined the Black Panthers. The Black Power movement impacted many lives. It began with Carmichael, and then it just grew. Carmichael paved the way for many more black car enthusiasts who allowed us to overcome social discontentment. He allowed us to overcome.
The world people in struggle. We want to ask you to stand up and cross your right hand over left and sing with us, We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome.